What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video here at CES Motorsport. So today we are going to be working on the METH Injection and the Dorch Stage 2 high pressure fuel pump. Mr. Cademan, while I was gone yesterday, finished up the turbo, got the downpipe in, did an oil change using 5W40.
Yes.
What do we use? Liquid moly?
Motul.
Motul 5W40, which is actually the same stuff that I used in the Supra. However, it was liquid moly, mostly the same stuff. But everything is, for the most part, bolted up. We have the intake back in, we have the new downpipe on, we have the new turbo on. Yep, so we are officially ready for the high pressure fuel pump, which I think he's getting into right now. And then the methanol setup. But I want to show you guys some of the stuff that Hendel handled while I was, that's a tongue twister, dude. That Hendel handled while I was out yesterday. He got some of the meth going. And we're going to talk about the fittings and what he changes from the original kit from Snow Performance.
BMS includes this NPT thread and your nylon lock fitting. Yep. So what we basically do is change to a -4 to 3/8 NPT stainless line, 90-degree elbow, down to a -4, back into your tank, because we're using all stainless lines on your tank. I did add a low-level sensor as well. Typically you're about like a gallon where it's at right now once it starts to bring the light on. And your pump is mounted, so that's pretty much ready to go.
So what is the advantage of running this over that?
Nylon is, if you're running full M1, nylon's not as strong as stainless, obviously.
Right.
So this has a stainless, so it's a PTFE line inside of there, and then you've got the stainless on the outside, so it's protecting the line. And it's not kinked here, so it's perfectly fine when it goes in.
Yep, flows through.
So that works well.
Cool, and then this just ends up mounting right in the trunk.
Correct.
And it's pretty flush with everything.
Yeah.
We did talk about possibly putting some like foam back here when you put it in there, just to make sure that it's super, super tight. But everything looks really good. So yes, boost cooler goes right onto the tank. And then how do you run like the lines and everything? Like, do you run the lines for the tank?
So we'll run the stainless line underneath the car, back up to the front of the car, and then put it on the charge pipe. Sweet.
And then all the electronics and stuff, those will go in the glove compartment?
Yeah, so we'll do it on the glove compartment, get it mounted in there. And this is a Turbo Smart 60 mil bracket.
Oh, okay.
But we just add some foam here and then get it to work.
To mount it up?
Yep, because it's a 52 mil gauge.
Yeah, perfect. All right, so Cademan is getting stuff off for the high pressure fuel pump. I had to take off the brace right here, all of like the plastic cowl stuff up front. The high pressure fuel pump is really simple. Does it come with lines and everything? Yeah, okay, so it should, yeah. Comes with lines, and then I think he's gonna start with the tank and then start running the lines, and I'll show you guys all that stuff too, so it should be good.
line. Make sure it fits.
So to summarize, they built the tank with the boost cooler outside of the car, obviously. Pulled the carpeting out, drilled the holes for the lines that were running from the tank to the front of the car. He labeled this up while I was in the car so you could get an accurate hole and measurement for it. And now we can start running the lines. All right, guys, so back at CES, we got John here, the owner of CES. We're going to be talking to you a little bit about methanol injection because I know some of you guys may not know all of the benefits of meth or why we do it, and brought John over to kind of clarify some things. So, John, if we could start out, what is the purpose or advantage of running a methanol system in a car like this?
Anytime you turn up a car, obviously, these cars, the biggest issue that you have is fueling. There are high pressure fuel pump upgrades that we do to help with the direct port systems with the high pressure side of things. John's getting the Dorch Stage 2 high pressure fuel pump upgrade, which bumps up the PSI of the high pressure system tremendously. But that is part of the process. When you really want to start turning these cars up, another good way to do that is by adding meth injection. There's a couple different ways to do meth injection setups, and we're going to go over, I guess today, what we have done on his particular car for this particular build. This one's getting a turbo, upgraded turbo, the Dynamic AutoWorks, was it Flowmax Plus?
Yep.
And then this particular system, we're going to do a dual jet custom setup that we do using Snow Performance products in the charge pipe. There's a couple different ways you can do this. Charge pipe is one way to do it. The other way is to do a full direct port system, which is a lot more involved and definitely more expensive. There are benefits and drawbacks to both systems. The benefit obviously is with a direct port system, you can have a jet in each individual cylinder, but there also is an inherent issue with connections lines.
Yeah,
so
okay.
There's a ton more connections and lines involved with doing that, and also the probability of failure does go up if it's not done properly. The two-jet system that we do is a little bit more simplistic, but at the same time offers a lot of the benefits that meth can give you, which is octane and also cooling. There's two basic setups for meth. You can either do like a 50-50 meth, which is what a lot of people talk about. Snow Performance offers stuff called Boost Juice, which is an actual 50% methanol mixture with 50% water. That is not a flammable solution, so it actually does have a little bit more of a cooling effect than it does have an increasing octane. But as a general rule of thumb, what we like to say is that the 93 meth with 50-50 kind of gives you almost about a 100 octane-ish effect when you add meth injection to the system. Then you can go up from there in percentages until you get 100% M1, which is literally like an additional fuel to the car. That does become flammable, which brings us to the next point about these kits. They do offer two types. You can either do the nylon lines with the plastic lines, or you can also do stainless braided lines. If you're doing a 50-50% meth system, you can get away with doing the nylon lines because it's not a flammable substance. So if a line breaks or cracks or melts or whatever, you don't really have a danger to burning the car down or some other type of issue. But once you get up to the higher percentages, we obviously recommend doing the stainless braided lines because it really is like a fuel, and you definitely don't want to be routing a fuel through the car or into the engine bay and having a leak and then causing a fire. Meth burns clear, so you barely can even see it. And just go look up on YouTube some horror stories from meth if you want to find out what happens when you have a problem with a meth leak if you haven't used braided lines or it hasn't been installed improperly.
And we're doing M1 on this car.
So this is going to be 100% M1, and we're doing a dual jet setup. We have our own jets that we run that are custom to our kits that we do for these cars. This can be played around with depending on the tune that is being put on the car. For John's particular setup, I think we're going to be doing 3 custom tunes. We're going to do a 93 only tune, we're going to do a 93 plus meth tune, and then we're going to do an E50 blend plus meth tune. Like we were saying, adding the fuel to the car is critical in making sure you keep the motor happy and you can turn these cars up to make more power. Anytime you're adding something like a bigger turbo that's increasing the amount of air going into the engine and the flow, you need to obviously increase the amount of fueling. The Gen 1 B58 motors obviously had a much smaller high pressure fuel pump where the rail pressure was a lot less than the Supras, for example, that have like 5,000 rail pressure versus these, which was like about 2,500-ish to 3. The Dorch Stage 2 high pressure fuel pump bumps that up so we can add a lot more fueling to be able to use a bigger turbo to make more power. So when you add meth into the mix, a lot of people, don't want to add meth because it does add another element that you have to take care of and have to maintain. That's why I actually like the B58 platforms with these cars, because we have the ability to do a trunk mount METH kit and a METH tank that has a lot more volume than, let's say, the Super builds that we do. The Supra being just a 2-seater and has no trunk, we have to mount the tank.
We use those like little tanks.
Yeah. It's like a 3-quart, or if you can get away with a 4-quart 1-gallon tank, you put it inside the engine bay compartment. With these, we can do a nice big tank. BMS Burger Tuning makes a nice stealth tank that we like incorporating into these METH systems. That goes in the trunk, goes underneath the cover, and literally is stealth. You can't even see everything. We mount the pump back there, run the lines from there to the front, and makes for a nice clean setup. The best news about it's like a 3-gallon tank, so you have a lot more METH that you can store in the car before you have to refill. On the Supras, when you run big jets and you have a much smaller tank, you're refilling a lot. Doesn't make it as user friendly as a daily, which is what steers a lot of people away from doing METH. The benefits of METH are definitely tremendous if used properly. So another thing people don't really realize is just adding a METH system to your car is not necessarily going to gain you power. Depending on how much METH you're spraying, the jet sizes that you're using, how many jets you're using, etc., you can actually lose a lot of power if the tune is not set up to incorporate METH. There's various ways to do this. A lot of people just do METH just for some cooling purposes, so they let the tuning do most of the work, and the METH is just a supplement to like cool intake charge and add a little bit of octane. If you are using METH to make a little bit more power, though, you need to actually revise and customize your tune to use the METH. Just spraying METH in the car can actually kill your power because you can wash the spark out. And obviously, if the tune is designed for a specific AFR ratio, once you start spraying METH in there, it can richen things up and cause you to drop those power levels that you originally had. And then that is where the benefit comes in from METH, because then you can tune, be a little bit more aggressive with your timing, the boost levels, etc., because METH does help to suppress knock. And with the addition of the octane that the methanol provides, you can actually be a little bit more aggressive overall with the tuning and make more power that way. So this is the BMS Stealth Tank that they make for these particular cars. 3-gallon tank. The way they've designed it, the pump gets incorporated underneath so that everything is very nice and clean. This is literally the only thing you see. With the cover on top, everything is basically gone, disappears, can't see it. You have full capability of using your entire trunk space. So for a daily driven car, or one that you want to use for functionality instead of drag racing or whatnot, this is literally the ideal and best setup. This is why we like using this when we do the custom METH kits on these cars. Another reason that we like using METH injection is because when you try to turn any car up, you start running into knock issues, which basically means pre-detonation if there is not enough octane. For a daily driven car, again, most customers are running on 93 octane. They're not running a race fuel. If you're running full E85 where we live, it's like you have to go 45 minutes away to get the ability to fill something up, unless you're buying like a race fuel like E90 Ignite Red, which we do like using a lot here because it's a standardized fuel. But the METH injection helps tremendously when using a lesser grade fuel like 93 octane, because it does help suppress detonation. So spraying that in offers a cooling benefit with ethanol, plus an octane benefit, raising the octane. Both of those things will cool hot spots in the cylinders and also allow for a tuner to be more aggressive with not only the timing, but allows them to run a little bit more boost pressures without running into the risks of having the car knocking or detonating, which can lead to catastrophic engine failure, as we all know. And that is really why METH has become a staple in the industry as far as putting them on customer cars to help aid in getting extra power, because it's relatively an easy setup. It is much more stable to tune with than something like nitrous, where you always have to worry about bottle pressures and, you know, the bottle running out, having to go to nitrous stations to fill up. This is something that can be easily done on a car in a day, and can be driven for a month or more depending on the tank size before you really have to worry about filling it up again. As long as the system is installed correctly, METH can be very, very reliable. And we've got a couple different ways that we do it. We like using a specific controller with the Snow kits, and we'll show you that next. Okay, so this is the Snow VC50 controller. It is actually a gauge kind of layout that makes it really user-friendly, easy to install. This one is mounted in our shop Supra in the glove box. There's a few different settings on it. The reason we like it is because it is very user-friendly, like we were saying. 3 buttons. Really and truly, you only need to use the one over here. This is the main screen. This one runs off boost pressure, so it actually does log boost for you. This will also show you your boost levels, like a boost gauge, and it will also show you meth spray when the meth is spraying. This bar right here, when you hit the arrow button, there's a few features. There's an injection start, and then there's also an injection full. So it would allow you to plug in your custom settings for your particular setup, depending on when you want the meth to start spraying, and then when you want the meth to be at 100% full spray. There's a power nozzle, which is an additional feature for like a second stage if you want to do that, which obviously we don't have, so that is off. You can actually change the text colors, so you can cycle through different colors to suit your needs for your particular car. It's pretty cool. And you also have the graph color as well that you can change, so it's really customizable for some user friendliness there, and depending on what color cockpit gauges that you have if you want to match them. There's also a convenient button here where you can turn the injection on and then turn it off. So if you wanted to do a custom 93 octane only tune, which is what we're going to be doing on John's car first, even with the METH system installed, you can turn it off and just run on 93. I know this is a really cool feature that a lot of people like, because they're like, oh, well, I don't want to have METH running on the car all the time. This is exactly what we can set up for you so that you don't have to do that. You can turn it off, take your trip somewhere with just plain 93, and then when you want the power back, and you flash in your map with your METH system on and with your custom METH map, and then that's pretty much it. The last thing that is also very convenient about this kit is this little button right here with the P. When you touch that button, it will actually purge the system for you. So if you did get meth in your lines, or you disconnected something, you're not going around having to put, like, you know, air or blowing in to get PSI to get the system to initiate itself. You just hit that button and you can actually purge the system until the meth is flowing again, which makes that also very convenient. And then the very last thing, which we can't really show you right now, but when the meth system gets low, there is a level sensor that we do in the meth tanks. Once that gets triggered, this whole area right here starts to flash yellow. So you will know that your meth is low and you need to fill up your tank. It will continue to flow until it's completely empty. So even though it says that the meth is low and the yellow light is on and flashing, it'll still give you that last bit of meth that's in your tank. It won't just shut the system off and you run into issues of running without meth. There are also some safeties that we can put in place to where if the meth system does start being faulty, it will cut you down to like a lower boost pressure, but those are a little bit more customized setups. Just depends on how much the customer wants to go into his build. A lot of customers are like, oh, well, I'm running like E50 or E85, I don't need meth. And while the E85 or E50 blends do give you more octane, which is actually, you know, why we like using E50 or a full E85, one of the reasons that we still like incorporating meth is that some of these cars still get maxed to the limits even when using like a full E85 with the direct injected system and the high pressure fuel pumps, depending on how much rail pressure we have. So adding meth into the mix, even with an E-blend or full E85, can be beneficial to continue to even make more power and keep it even safer. I guess that's kind of the bottom line where we want to get at. Adding meth injection not only helps you to increase the power, but it does keep everything a little bit safer. Depending on how aggressive the tune can be, sometimes you rely a lot more heavily on meth injection to make a lot of increased power. So use that to your discretion and talk to your tuner when you're doing systems like this, because depending on how much power you want to make and how much you want to rely on meth is how much power you're going to make. And also keep in mind that if the meth system does for some reason shut off, a lot of tuners will not tune as aggressively so that the ECU can pull back enough timing or whatever to help keep the motor from harm if you have meth for some reason that stops flowing. When you're doing meth injection setups and you're doing them like in the charge pipe, for example, instead of doing like a full direct port system, you want to place them so that you have maximum atomization. Everything flows through as much as possible, and the meth actually atomizes and spreads through all the cylinders. That's one of the hardest parts when doing charge pipe injection, because you want the spread to be as even as possible. Keys has a nice setup and FTP has a nice setup. This one for the B58 Gen 1s has a jet that's in the back here, and also one that is underneath right here on the throttle body. The super versions have an additional bung here instead of here or here, but basically we like doing the dual jet setup to increase the amount of meth that's flowing and also to give you that additional spread so that the meth actually atomizes as it goes through the system, which will increase its ability to get through all the cylinders and do its job, suppressing knock, increasing octane, etc. with these particular B58 motors that are water to air cooled, you have your intake manifold, which you actually have the core that's inside the intake, and it does have the coolant circulating through it to kind of keep it cool, which is what a water to air cooled system is versus an air to air, which most people are familiar with, that does not have the core in the actual intake manifold. It has it as a front mount intercooler, you know, in
Like
the
the
front,
F55s.
in the front of the grill, etc. So what METH does is when you're spraying it in the charge pipe area, it will actually flow through the core, and it will also cool the core as it's going into the intake. That allows for increased efficiency, so that if you aren't necessarily wanting to spend the money to upgrade the actual intercooler core or intake, that can be very pricey. This is another alternative to help cool the system down while you're running the car at higher power levels. The METH injection also decreases your intake air temps. So when you're running really hot, when you're spraying the METH, it will actually cool the intake charge down, the air charge going in, which makes it more dense, which translates to more power. So those are a lot of the additional benefits when you spray METH, especially in a charge pipe METH jet system, because it sprays through the core, cools the core down, and also cools the intake charge too. Instead of heat soaking, the METH keeps everything consistently cooler and allows you to run consistent power levels back to back to back.
So we actually have some numbers here from another 340 that was just in here. They got the exact same kit and everything that they're doing here at CES with his car that I'm getting in mine. But I wanted to show you guys some numbers from the Stage 2 with the downpipe and the M Performance exhaust system. That was it, right?
Cold air intake too.
Cold air intake, and it's on a boot mode Stage 2. 93 octane tune. So remember in the video yesterday, I shot out like the car's probably making around 400, maybe a little over 400 wheel. Well, he actually ended up making about 409 wheel and 470 torque on the Stage 2, and that's boot mode.
So basically bolt-ons, stock turbo, 93 octane, Stage 2 tuned. These are the numbers that you should see with a typical Gen 1 B58.
Bam. That's it. And those are pretty consistent all the way through.
Okay, so we took this customer's car to the next level. After that, he decided he wanted to upgrade the high pressure fuel pump. So remember how we talked about how fueling is very critical for these cars. He added the Dorch Stage 1 pump, and then we re-dynoed the car with the Stage 2 Plus 93 octane tune from BMS 3, since he had the upgraded high pressure fuel pump. And you can see the gains. Those are the peak gains that we saw. Bumped it up to about almost 430 wheel horsepower, 500 wheel torque, just by adding the high pressure fuel pump. This is the Stage 1, which bumps it up a certain amount. And then Dorch also has a Stage 2, which takes it even further, which is what you're running, and which is why we can make even more power with that setup, because we have the additional fueling to do so. So the next stage was actually to add E30 blend fuel in, and then dyno on the E30 Stage 2 Plus map with BMS 3. And the numbers once again increased to about almost 475 wheel and about 517, 520 torque, give or take. This just goes to show you what the benefits of adding some ethanol to the mix will give you, and you can see the progression from basically stock turbo and bolt-ons, then the high pressure fuel pump upgrade, Stage 1 Dorch, and then the Stage 1 Dorch plus the E30 blend. So those are some pretty decent jumps. This customer decided to upgrade the turbo. He went with the Dynamic AutoWorks FlowMax, not the FlowMax Plus, which is the next step up that Dynamic AutoWorks offers. Obviously, if you guys don't know them, they're similar to Vargas or Pure Turbos. It is a bolt-in replacement turbo. They're another option that's starting to gain a lot of steam and a lot of respect in the community, because they are producing a really high-quality product. This was the first time we were able to test one of these turbos out. When we installed it and did some dyno tuning, we were very impressed with it. We're going to be doing the Plus version, which will be even more flow, so we're very excited to see what those numbers are going to make.
So the big difference between the data that we're showing today and what I'm doing is the Dorch Stage 2 versus Dorch Stage 1.
Correct.
And then the Plus turbo versus the standard.
That's right. Yep.
Max turbo.
Yep. So bigger high pressure fuel pump and slightly bigger turbo as well for the thick whip build. When we did the turbo upgrade, we also did a METH injection system on the car too. So this would be upgraded Dynamic AutoWorks FlowMax plus the dual jet METH injection systems, the custom ones that we do for the B58 cars. He did 2 tunes. This will be custom F80 Paul tuned through BMS 3 and Pro Tuning Freaks, 93 plus METH. And another thing that I'd like to mention is, because this customer had the high pressure, the Stage 1 high pressure fuel pump, we could only do a max of about an E30 blend plus METH safely. For John's build, we're going to be doing the Stage 2 high pressure fuel pump plus the FlowMax Plus turbo, and we can also increase the METH content to E50 F30 plus METH injection to make even more power because we have the additional fueling, and with the bigger turbo we ought to see some more power there too. So very excited to see those results. Another fantastic gain just by continuing the progression. So for customers who want to entertain the option of doing a bolt-on turbo upgrade and adding METH injection, this is the kind of power level you can expect to see on pump gas plus METH.
Yep, and there's your progression right there. So it's a little over 100 wheel horsepower from where he started.
And the thing I also like to show is you know, not only are the peak numbers important, but once you start getting into top end power, and I know we have a lot of data up here right now, but you know, you've got your horsepower lines and you have your torque lines. But I mean, at 6,500 RPM, we're at 515 horsepower at the wheels, whereas before, without the upgraded turbo and METH, it was a 450.
Huge gain.
Yep, and only 417.
Even little turbos drop off.
Yep. You can kind of see how the bigger turbo is going to carry over a lot more power versus the stock that starts to taper off up top, as a smaller turbo is going to do.
And you got one more for us?
And we do have one more. So we ended up doing the E30 plus METH tuning. So we started at E30 and we were able to tune it with up to E40 blends because the car was reacting well and everything looked great. And then these were the final numbers when we finished up with F80 Paul custom tuning on E40 plus the METH injection. And again, the METH injection is the same dual jet charge pipe system that we used with 100% M1. Yeah, so that's pretty big. I mean, we're closing in at 600 wheel horsepower now on a daily driven car and 550 plus torque. This was the first time he came in, and then this is when we were finally completed the build with everything he wanted to do and left. But at 6,500 RPM, where he was at 403 horsepower at the wheels, he's at 572 and a half, which is literally 170 wheel horsepower gain over stock. Crazy. And you're definitely going to feel that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so hopefully you guys got all that. It's a lot to digest, but I wanted to show this to you because I have a lot of people asking, you know, why I went with this turbo and why I'm running this setup. It's because we already have the data. I had a good idea as to where we would be, and like he was saying before, you know, this customer had the stage 1 high pressure fuel pump and they didn't have the plus turbo, so we have a little more room on my build to make a little more power. But then again, you know, like we were talking about before with methanol injection port versus charge pipe, we're not shooting for the moon. We're trying to make decent, reliable power. And as you guys know, I'm driving this car down to Florida for Invasion. Like, this is a car that I'm going to be using a lot, and I'm not just sending it to the track and trailering it out and doing all that. But it's going to be making really good power. And still, if you look at these numbers, 409 to 575, 470 to 554, like, that's a ton of power. I had that kind of power in the Supra, and it was insane. Like, that car couldn't even put down the power. It was so much, you know?
Yeah, and these kind of numbers, we've already had customers running, you know, mid-10s with these power levels. Yeah. Same thing with the Supras. These power levels, even with a little bit less power, believe it or not, our own shop Supra was running 10.5 at 130 miles an hour. So for a daily driven, reliably tuned street car, this is the formula that we like using for customers who want to have these kind of power levels.
And I'm all-wheel drive, so I can grip, which is a big part of it.
That should help.
That should help. Cool, man. Well, thank you for taking the time and giving us all the data. I always love to see that stuff, and I know you guys like to see that stuff too, so that's why we did it. All right, so they're just wrapping up. Just at the tail end here, gonna put the interior back together. Mr. Caban's finishing all the interior pieces for the gauge and everything. Everything is ran up here. All we have to do is fill it up with METH and purge it. But we are going to effectively end this one out and come back here tomorrow, and we're going to be tuning and we're going to be getting into the power. So about a full day to get this kit installed, have it all done correctly, as well as, you know, all the other stuff that we're doing too. I'm gonna let these guys finish it up today, and then we're actually gonna be doing the tie rods. Like I said, I have to replace these tie rods. They're gonna do that as well while I'm gone. Back at it in the morning, tuning tomorrow, and we're gonna have some good power for you guys. It's gonna be fun. But if you need anything done, hit these guys up. CES Motorsport. Have a link down below, as well as all the products you saw in the video. Thanks so much for watching. Hendel, say bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.